Lena Hart, a night shift nurse at Mercer Military Hospital, was kneeling beside a wounded soldier when the archive officer pointed at her and said, "That woman is lying. The combat medic she claims to be never existed." The trauma bay went silent. Sergeant Owen Pike was bleeding through his bandages, whispering a call sign no one understood. At his feet, Ranger, the retired war dog who had refused every handler for 3 years, suddenly crawled toward Lena and pressed a rusted dog tag into her palm. The tag was blackened by fire, stamped with a unit number erased from every database. Then Ranger lifted his scarred muzzle and growled, not at the nurse, but at the man holding her file. Why would a dog remember a woman the military had officially denied? Before we step into this forgotten file, tell us where you're watching from. Drop your country name in the comments so this community of courage can find you. And if stories about loyal dogs, hidden heroes, sacrifice, and emotional justice move your heart, subscribe to Forgotten Medic Files. By 2:17 in the morning, Mercer Military Hospital had become the kind of place where truth either survived or died under fluorescent light. Lena Hart stood in Trauma Bay 3 with her sleeves rolled to her elbows, one gloved hand pressing gauze against Sergeant Owen Pike's side, while the other checked the pulse fluttering beneath his jaw. He had arrived 10 minutes earlier in a convoy ambulance, half-conscious, pale from blood loss, his right leg locked in a splint, his uniform jacket cut open by paramedics. The wound across his ribs was not fresh battlefield damage. It was from a stateside training accident, a routine ceremony rehearsal that had turned into metal, glass, and screaming brakes. But Owen was not reacting like a man injured in a parking lot. He was reacting like a man still trapped in an old war. "No lice," he rasped, eyes rolling beneath bruised lids. "Tell Lantern, no lights. They'll see us." A resident tried to lean over him. Owen swung blindly, almost tearing his IV line loose. 2 orderlies grabbed his shoulders and the monitor began to shriek. "Everyone back," Lena said. Her voice was calm, but not soft. It carried the kind of authority that did not come from a badge. It came from nights when calm was the only thing between a living man and a folded flag. Dr. Victor Harlan entered behind her with a tablet pressed against his chest. He was the hospital's deputy administrator and acting director of military medical archives, a man whose white coat always looked cleaner than the room he walked into. His eyes narrowed at Lena's hands. "Don't override the physician on duty, Nurse Hart. The physician on duty is about to lose his patient," Lena said. Owen's breathing hitched. He was staring past the ceiling now, through the ceiling, into a place nobody in that room could see. "Raven 9, he whispered. "Where's Raven 9? At that name, something moved in the corner. A black and tan Belgian Malinois lay beside the trauma bay doors, muzzled only by age and grief. Ranger had been brought with Owen as part of a veterans rehabilitation ceremony that morning. The dog was retired, decorated, and famously unreachable. 3 handlers had tried to coax him from the ambulance. He had refused them all, planting his paws and staring into the building as if he had smelled a ghost. Now he rose. The entire room noticed. Ranger's joints were stiff, his muzzle gray, one ear split at the tip from shrapnel long ago. But when Owen said Raven 9, the dog moved like a memory called back into flesh. "Keep that animal out," Harlan snapped. Ranger ignored him. He crossed the polished floor, not to Owen first, but to Lena. His nose touched the inside of her wrist where her sleeve had slipped upward. There, half hidden beneath the glove line, was a burn scar shaped like a crescent, old and silver against her skin. Lena froze. For 3 years at Mercer, she had kept that scar covered. She had worked nights, taken the hardest patients, stayed away from ceremonies, commendation walls, and anything with a flag-draped speech. To the hospital, she was a competent nurse with no military record worth noting. To Ranger, she was something else. The dog whined once, low, broken. Then he pressed his head against her knee. Owen's violent shaking slowed. Lena leaned close to the wounded soldier. "Owen, listen to me. You're at Mercer. You're safe. Follow my voice." His eyes focused for half a second. Lantern. The word cut through her harder than any accusation could have. Harlan's gaze snapped from Owen to Lena. "What did he call you?" Lena did not answer. She adjusted the oxygen mask over Owen's face. Two units cross-matched, prep for imaging after pressure stabilizes. "And get me warm fluids." The resident obeyed before remembering he outranked her. "Harlan, step closer." "Nurse Hart, step away from the patient. Not until his pressure comes up. You are not authorized to give battlefield commands in my trauma bay." Lena looked at him then, really looked at him. And for the first time the youngest nurses saw something in her expression they had never seen before. Not fear. Recognition. Colonel Elias Ward arrived moments later, still in dress uniform from the canceled ceremony. He was Mercer's liaison commander. A broad-shouldered man with gray at his temples and a permanent heaviness around his eyes. He took in the bleeding soldier, the growling dog, Harlan's rigid posture, and Lena's hands still locked over the wound. "What happened?" Ward demanded. Harlan lifted his tablet. "We have a serious issue, Colonel. Sergeant Pike appears to be responding to delusional wartime triggers, and this nurse is encouraging them." "That's not what I asked." Harlan tapped the screen. He called her by a classified combat call sign. "I checked preliminary records. Nurse Lena Hart has no combat medic history, no deployment file, no attachment under Raven 9. Nothing." The room shifted around her. Lena felt it happened before anyone spoke. Trust draining from faces, curiosity turning to suspicion. The old cruelty of systems that needed paper before they believed blood. A young doctor whispered, "Stolen valor." Ranger's head jerked toward him with a warning growl. Lena kept pressure on Owen's wound. She did not defend herself. That was what stunned them most. An innocent person should have protested. A liar should have panicked. Lena did neither. Colonel Ward studied her. "Nurse Hart," her throat tightened. "Sergeant Pike needs surgery." "That can wait." One sentence. "No," Lena said. "It can't." The monitor dipped. Owen's lips went pale. Lena moved before permission could catch her. She shifted pressure lower, caught the hidden bleed, and barked for the surgical team. Ranger planted himself beside the bed, his body between Lena and Harlan, as if the old dog had chosen his side. Harlan's face darkened. "Colonel, I am formally requesting that Nurse Hart be removed from this case pending verification." At the word verification, Owen's hand shot up and grabbed Lena's sleeve. His grip was weak but desperate. "Don't erase her again," he whispered. The trauma bay felt colder than any operating room. Again, nobody moved. Then Ranger lowered his mouth to the small canvas pouch strapped to Owen's torn gear. With careful teeth, he dragged something free. It clinked against the floor once, twice, then slid to a stop at Lena's shoes. A dog tag, burned black at the edges. Lena bent slowly. The name stamped into the metal was not hers, but the unit line beneath it read, Raven 9 Medical Attachment, and scratched by hand across the back, so faint only she could read it, was one word. Lantern. Harlan lunged for it. Ranger got there first, and the old war dog's snarl turned every head toward the man who had just tried to take the first proof that Lena Hart had ever existed. The dog tag disappeared into an evidence bag before sunrise, but the room did not recover from what it had seen. Owen Pike was taken into surgery with two surgeons, one anesthesiologist, and Lena Hart standing outside the doors. Because Dr. Harlan had barred her from entering, she watched through the narrow glass pane as if she could hold the man's life together by refusing to look away. Ranger sat beside her. No one had ordered him there. No one could make him leave. Every few minutes, he leaned against Lena's leg with his scarred shoulder, grounding her the way she had once grounded men under mortar fire. His presence terrified her more than Harlan's accusation. A person could lie. A file could vanish. A medal could be misplaced. A witness silenced. A name deleted. But a war dog remembered through scent, tone, pulse, and pain. Ranger remembered something Lena had spent years trying to bury. Colonel Ward stood across from her, arms folded. "I need the truth." Lena's eyes stayed on the operating room. "You won't find it in the archive." "That sounds convenient." It sounded convenient when they told me the same thing. Ward's expression tightened, but not unkindly. "Who told you?" Lena swallowed. The hallway hummed with machines, distant footsteps, rolling carts. She had heard those same sounds in field hospital made of canvas and fear. "After Blackridge," she said quietly, "I woke up in a hospital with no uniform, no badge, and no team. A man from records told me my attachment was never logged. He said if I tried to claim otherwise, I'd be charged with impersonation." Blackridge was a classified recovery operation. Yes, officially, there was no medical attachment. Lena almost smiled. Officially, a lot of dead men were never scared either. Ward looked down at Ranger. "And the dog?" Ranger was assigned to Sergeant Micah Voss. The name tasted like ash. "Handler, Raven 9. Ward's brow lifted. Lena finally looked at him. Dr. Harlan's younger brother. The colonel's face changed. Not disbelief, calculation. Before he could ask the next question, Harlan strode down the hallway with two military police officers behind him. He carried his tablet like a weapon. "Nurse Hart," he said loudly enough for nearby staff to hear, "you are relieved of duty until an identity review is complete. I'm not leaving until Pike is stable." "You don't decide that." Ranger rose. The MPS slowed. Harlan noticed, and anger flashed across his polished face. "Someone remove that dog?" "No," Ward said. Harlan turned. "Colonel, with respect, this is now an archive integrity issue." "With respect, Doctor, a patient in my command just whispered that your archive erased the nurse standing in front of us." Harlan's jaw flexed. "Sergeant Pike is sedated, concussed, and psychologically compromised. That dog tag could have come from anywhere. It came from his gear. Gear passes through many hands." Lena's voice was low. "Then why did you reach for it before anyone read it?" The question struck clean. Harlan stared at her. Behind him, nurses pretended not to listen. A janitor stopped pushing his car. The hospital had its own battlefield now, and everyone could smell smoke. "I reached," Harlan said, "because unsecured military property was on the floor." Ranger gave a deep, rumbling sound. Lena put a hand on his head. The dog settled, but his eyes never left Harlan. Colonel Ward stepped closer to Lena. "Tell me what lantern means." Her face shut down. "No, you want me to believe you." "No," she said. "I want Owen to live." The operating room doors opened before Ward could answer. A surgeon stepped out, mask hanging under his chin. "He's alive," the surgeon said. "Barely. Internal bleeding control. But he's unstable and still agitated under sedation. We found old scar tissue near his ribs. Prior combat trauma. Whoever treated him back then did fast work. Ugly, but it saved him." Harlan's mouth tightened. Ranger suddenly moved. He did not go toward Owen's room. He turned down the hall, nose high, body tense. Lena knew that posture, tracking scent, layered beneath disinfectant, following a trail nobody else believed existed. Ranger, she whispered. The dog kept walking. Ward followed first. Lena followed second. Harlan hesitated, then came after them, too controlled to run and too frightened not to. Ranger led them past the recovery ward, past a wall of framed commendations, past smiling photographs of units whose public stories had been cleaned for visitors. He stopped at the memorial corridor where retired equipment sat behind glass, helmets, folded flags, broken radios, a cracked flight stretcher from an operation whose plaque reads simply, "Unnamed medical evacuation, year redacted." Ranger stood before the stretcher. Then he began to paw at the base. "Stop that animal," Harlan barked. Ward raised a hand. "Let him work." The dog dug harder. His nails scraped metal. Lena's breathing changed as she saw what he had smelled. A strip of faded cloth had been wedged beneath the stretcher frame. Ranger caught it between his teeth and pulled. The cloth came free with a dry whisper. It was a medic patch, burned along one edge. The cross in the center had once been white, now brown by smoke and age. On the back, written in permanent marker, were 5 names: Micah, Owen, Torres, Keen, Lantern. Lena staggered one step. Ward saw it. Harlan saw it. Worse, Ranger saw it and pressed his body hard against her knees as if bracing her before memory could knock her down. Harlan reached again. "That belongs to the archive." Lena closed her fist around it. "No," she said. "It belonged to my dad." For the first time since he entered the hospital that night, Harlan lost the mask of professionalism. His face twisted with something older than anger. "You should have stayed erased," he whispered. The words were almost too quiet, but Ranger heard them. So did Colonel Ward. And in the memorial corridor, under the photographs of honored soldiers, the forgotten nurse finally understood that her disappearance had not been a clerical error. It had been a decision. By morning, the hospital had split into 2 invisible camps. There were those who looked at Lena Hart and saw a nurse accused of lying about war. And there were those who had been in Trauma Bay 3 when Ranger laid his old head against her knee and Owen Pike begged them not to erase her again. Lena was ordered to surrender her badge pending review. She handed it over without argument, but she refused to leave the building. Colonel Ward allowed her to remain in a family waiting room under informal supervision, which sounded gentler than detention and felt colder than prison. Ranger refused to leave her there alone. Harlan objected 3 times. Ward overruled him 3 times. The dog lay across the doorway like a living barricade. Lena sat beneath a vending machine's blue glow. The burn patch spread across her lap. 5 names, 4 men, and 1 call sign. She ran her thumb over Micah's name until the letters blurred. Micah Voss had been Ranger's handler. He had been 26, stubborn, funny at the worst possible moments, and incapable of eating an orange without sharing half of it with his dog. He had also been Victor Harlan's brother, though the 2 men had carried the same last name like it belonged to different families. Micah had trusted Lena before she trusted herself. On Black Ridge, when the evacuation route collapsed and the radios died, he had shoved Ranger's lid into her hand and said, "He'll follow the one still thinking." That had been Lena, until the fire, until the order, until she woke up erased. Colonel Ward entered quietly with a paper cup of coffee. He placed it near her but did not sit. "I checked the active personnel archive," he said. "No Lena Hart attached to Raven 9. No Lantern call sign. No medical supplement. I told you. I also checked casualty cross-references. There are gaps." Lena looked up. Ward's eyes were missing files. Gaps. Like someone cut around a shape and hoped no one noticed the hole. "Harlan, I don't know yet, but you suspect?" "I suspect enough to keep asking." Ranger lifted his head at the sound of footsteps. Harlan appeared outside the waiting room, flanked by one MP this time, his face restored to administrative calm. "Colonel," Harlan said, "you're making a mistake by entertaining trauma fantasies." Ward turned. "I asked, that what we're calling physical evidence. A burn patch with a nickname on it is not proof of service." "No," Ward said, "but your reaction to it is proof of interest." Harlan's eyes slid to Lena. This woman has had years to build a story. She works in a military hospital. She hears veterans talk. She knows terminology. She knows how to manipulate grief. Lena rose slowly. Ranger rose with her. "You think I wanted this?" she asked. "You think I wanted your brother's dog to recognize me in front of half the hospital?" Harlan's composure cracked at the mention of Micah. "Do not speak about him. I carried him." The words left her before she could stop them. Silence filled the room so fast it seemed to shut off the lights. Harlan stared. Lena's voice dropped. "He was alive when I reached him. Not for long, but alive. He asked me to take Ranger. He asked me to get Owen out. He asked me to tell his brother, 'Stop.' He said you'd know where he hid the second copy." Harlan stepped back as if struck. Ward caught it. "Second copy of what?" Lena closed her eyes. She had never meant to say it that much. The memory had been buried beneath morphine, threats, and years of deliberate quiet. But the patch had loosened something. Ranger had loosened something. "I don't know," she said. Micah was delirious, smoke everywhere. He kept saying, "Not the archive copy. The other one." Then the ridge came down. Harlan's face had gone bloodless. Ward turned fully toward him. "Doctor, Harlan recovered too quickly. A dying man's nonsense, repeated years later by a woman, desperate for legitimacy." Ranger suddenly pushed past Lena and moved to Harlan's side. The MP reached for the dog's collar, but Ranger was faster. He sniffed Harlan's coat pocket, then growled. Harlan froze. "Empty your pocket," Ward said. "This is absurd." "Empty it." Slowly, Harlan withdrew a small plastic evidence sleeve. Inside was a sliver of blackened metal. Lena recognized it immediately. It was not from the patch. It was from the dog tag Ranger had dropped in the trauma bay. A broken corner snapped from the edge. Ward's voice hardened. "How did that get in your pocket?" Harlan said nothing. "You handled evidence after it was bagged." "I secured contamination. You stole part of it." Harlan's stare turned flat and dangerous. "Colonel, be very careful. Some files are sealed above your clearance." Ward took one step closer. "Then it's interesting you keep insisting this file does not exist." For one heartbeat, nobody breathed. Then alarms erupted down the hall. Owen Pike's room. Ranger bolted before anyone moved. Lena followed on instinct, forgetting badge, suspension, accusation. She ran like she had run through smoke. Inside Owen's recovery room, monitors screamed. Owen had torn one restraint loose and was clawing at his oxygen mask, eyes wide with terror. "Ambush left," he gasped. "Lantern, move!" A nurse tried to hold him down. Owen thrashed, opening his surgical dressing. Blood seeped red through white. Harlan reached the doorway. "Security." But Lena was already at the bed. She caught Owen's wrist, lowered her forehead near his, and said in a voice no one in Mercer had ever heard from her, "Raven 9, hold Doc. Lantern has you. Breathe on my count." Owen stopped fighting, not gradually. Immediately, Ranger jumped onto the chair beside the bed and placed one paw against Owen's arm. Lena counted. Owen breathed. The monitor steadied. Every person in the room saw it. Colonel Ward saw it. Colonel saw it too. And for the first time, his fear became stronger than his anger. Because a sedated wounded soldier and an old war dog had just obeyed a nurse the archive said had never existed. After Owen stabilized, no one tried to remove Lena from the hospital again. They did not restore her badge. They did not apologize. But they stepped aside when Ranger followed her from room to room, and no one mocked the call sign lantern where she could hear it. Colonel Ward moved the investigation to a sealed conference room beside the command offices. He placed the burn pad, the dog tag, and the broken metal fragment on the table. Harlan sat opposite Lena, hands folded, expression carved from stone. Owen was too weak to attend, but Ward had ordered a camera feed from his recovery room in case he woke lucid. Ranger lay beneath the screen, his eyes never closing. "We start simple," Ward said. "Nurse Hart, tell me about Black Ridge." Lena stared at the table. She had spent years refusing to assemble the memory in order. It came instead as fragments, heat, sand in her teeth. Micah laughing over a radio that cut out mid-word. Owen screaming for a tourniquet. Ranger's body slamming into hers before the blast. A child's hand slipping from a stretcher. Her own voice promising a man he would not die alone. Then watching him do exactly that. "We were attached to a recovery unit," she said. "Raven 9, not regular deployment. Mixed personnel, some military, some medical support under temporary classification." "Why temporary? We weren't supposed to be there." Ward glanced at Harlan. Harlan did not move. Lena continued. "There was a convoy pinned below Black Ridge Pass. Officially supplies, unofficially witnesses, local medics, interpreters, 2 children, and a courier carrying footage of an unlawful strike." Ward's jaw tightened. "That is a serious allegation. I didn't know what the courier had then. I only knew people were bleeding. And your role, combat medics, field stabilization, extraction triers, casualty movement. Under what name? Lie not, Lena Hart. Because the mission roster used call signs for anyone outside the permanent unit. Look down at the empty personnel search report. Convenient for erasure." Lena nodded once. "Very." Harlan finally spoke. "Or convenient for invention." Ranger raised his head. Lena looked at Harlan. "Your brother didn't think I was invented when he handed me his dog?" Harlan's face darkened. Ward held up a hand. "Enough. What happened during extraction?" Lena's fingers curled around the edge of the chair. "The convoy was hit twice. First blast disabled lead and rear vehicles. Second blast came after the medics moved in. The second blast killed Micah Voss." "No." Her voice thinned. "The fire after did." Harlan looked away for half a second. Lena saw it and felt something sharpen inside her. "You knew," she said. Ward turned to Harlan. "Knew what?" Lena leaned forward. "You knew he didn't die in the first explosion. That's why you hate me." The official casualty summary said instant death, didn't it? Harlan said nothing. "It was cleaner that way," Lena continued. "No dying request, no second copy, no medic who heard him speak." Harlan stood so abruptly his chair scraped backward. "Me brother's death is not a tool for your performance." Lena stood too. "Then stop using it as a lock." The door opened before Ward could intervene. A nurse stepped in, breathless. "Colonel, Sergeant Pike is awake. He's asking for the dog." "And Nurse Hart?" They moved together. Owen's room was dim, monitors softened, curtains drawn. He looked smaller awake, as if survival had taken inches from him. Ranger approached the bed carefully, tail low. Owen's fingers trembled as they found the dog's fur. "Old man," Owen whispered. "You made it." Ranger pressed his muzzle against Owen's chest with heartbreaking gentleness. Lena stayed near the door. Owen turned his head. His eyes found her. For a moment, He was not a wounded soldier in a hospital bed. He was a young man under smoke, watching someone crawl toward him when everyone else thought he was already gone. "Lantern," he said. Harlan, standing behind Ward, folded his arms. "Sergeant, you are under medication. Answer only what you can verify." Owen's gaze slid to him. "I can verify your brother died asking for you." Harlan flinched. Ward stepped closer. "Sergeant Pike, do you know this woman?" Owen's eyes filled. "She carried me out of Black Ridge," he said. "Half my blood was gone. My leg was trapped under the axle. Everyone thought the route was finished. She tied me to Ranger's harness and crawled under burning canvas to cut me loose." Lena closed her eyes. Owen's voice broke. "I called her an angel for years, because nobody would give me her name." The room was utterly still. Harlan recovered with a cruel precision. "And yet you never reported her." Owen turned his face toward him. "I did. 3 times. Every report came back corrected. Every witness statement returned with lantern removed." He swallowed hard. "Then they told me if I kept pushing, they'd reopen my mental fitness evaluation." Ward looked sickened. Lena whispered, "Why didn't you tell me?" Owen's mouth trembled. "Because I thought you were dead." Ranger suddenly shifted. His ears pricked toward the hall. A sound had reached him before the humans noticed it. Footsteps fast and heavy, stopping outside the room. A young clerk appeared, holding a printed sheet in one shaking hand. "Colonel Ward," he said, "you told me to monitor archive access." Ward turned, and someone just opened the Black Ridge sealed index from Dr. Harlan's terminal. Harlan's eyes narrowed. The clerk swallowed. "Yes, sir. But the system shows deletion in progress." For a second, everyone stared at the man, who had no reason to look afraid, unless there was something left to destroy. Then Ranger barked once. Lena was already moving, because somewhere inside Mercer's archive, the last remaining proof of Raven 9 was being erased again. The basement archive smelled like dust, toner, and secrets that had outlived the men who made them. Colonel Ward's clearance opened the first 2 doors. The third required Harlan's biometric access. He pressed his tune to the scanner with visible reluctance, while Ranger stood inches away, teeth just barely showing. "Call off the dog," Harlan said. "No," Ward replied. The lock clicked. Inside, rows of compact shelving stood beneath cold lights. Digital terminals lined the far wall. One screen flashed red with a progress bar. "Purge request. Black Ridge passed supplemental index status. 72%." Word rushed to the terminal. "Cancel it." The clerk typed frantically. "Eyes locked under archival authority." Ward turned. Harlan's face was pale, but his voice stayed controlled. "I did not initiate that." "Cancel it." "I can't without executive override." Lena moved past them, not to the terminal but to Ranger. The dog had gone still near the old physical storage cages. He was sniffing along the bottom seam of a locked cabinet labeled obsolete canine equipment. "Retired handler property." "Ranger," Lena whispered. His tail gave one hard strike against the floor. Ward noticed. "What is it?" Harlan said, "Some files are sealed above your clearance." Lena said. Micah said, "Not the archive copy, the other one." Harlan's eyes widened. Lena pointed to the cabinet. "Open it." "No," Harlan said too quickly. Ward stepped toward him. "Open it. That cage contains private effects of deceased handlers. Then you should want them preserved." The purge bar hit 81%. Harlan did not move. Ward drew himself up, voice turning command hard. "Dr. Victor Harlan, open that cabinet now, or I will have you detained for obstruction of an active military inquiry." For several seconds, Harlan looked like a man measuring whether his secret was worth handcuffs. Then he opened it. Ranger pushed inside before the door fully swung wide. Old leashes hung from hooks, cracked harnesses, training sleeves, retired collars with faded names. Ranger ignored all of them until he reached a dust-covered metal box on the lowest shelf. He parted once. Lena crouched. Her hands shook as she pulled it free. The box bore Micah Voss' name. Harlan whispered. "Don't." Lena looked up at him. "Why?" He had no answer. Ward took the box and broke the corroded latch with a screwdriver from the clerk's desk. Inside lay a folded handler vest, a cracked orange training ball, a photograph of Micah with Ranger as a younger dog, and beneath them, wrapped in waterproof cloth, a small dated drive taped to a blood-stained field card. The field card was written in Micah's hand. "If Lantern is erased, start here." Lena stopped breathing. The purge bar reached 89%. Ward shoved the drive into an isolated reader. The clerk bypassed the network. A folder appeared. Raven 9 Field Medical Logs. Black Ridge Pass recorded by Sergeant M. Voss. Witness, copy Harlan. Back toward the door. Ranger blocked him. "Victor," Ward said, without looking away from the screen. "Stay where you are." The first file opened. Static filled the monitor, then body camera footage. Smoke, shouting, a dog barking, someone screaming for a medic. The camera jerked toward a woman crawling through debris with a medical bag dragging behind her. Her face was streaked with soot. Her left sleeve burned. A crescent-shaped wound bled at her wrists. Lena Hart, younger, terrified, alive. On the video, Micah's voice coughed. "Lantern." Owens pinned. The woman turned. "Ranger, brace." The dog in the footage surged forward, harness tight. Lena disappeared beneath twisted metal. Owen's scream ripped through the speakers. In the archive basement, the real Owen was not there to hear it. But every person present felt the sound in their bones. Ward looked at Lena. There was no suspicion left in his face, only grief. The footage continued. Lena dragged Owen free, pressed a dressing into his side, then looked toward the camera. "Micah, move." "I can't." Micah gasped. The camera dropped. Flames bloomed at the edge of the image. Then another voice cut through the chaos, clear, commanding, unmistakable. "Leave the compromised witnesses. Extract uniformed personnel only." Ward froze. "Who gave that order?" Lena stared at the screen. Harlan's voice was barely audible. "Turn it off." Ward slowly turned toward him. "That was you." Harlan's face collapsed inward, not in guilt exactly, but in the terror of a man whose version of history had just found its witness. "I was Operations Medical Command," he said. "Remote liaison. I had to make triage decisions." Lena rose. "You ordered us to leave civilians and wounded behind." "I ordered preservation of mission priority." "You ordered Micah abandoned." Harlan shouted. "I ordered what command requires." The purge bar hit 97%. The clerk cried, "Colonel." Ward turned back, but the terminal flashed. "Purge complete." The official index vanished. For one crushing second, it seemed the archive had won again. Then Ranger balked at the metal box. Lena looked down. There was one more item beneath the cloth, a laminated card, worked by heat, with a photograph and temporary mission credentials. Name, Lena Hart. Role, Combat Medic. Attachment, call sign, Lantern Unit, Raven 9 across the bottom. Authorizing the attachment was Victor Harlan's own signature. Lena lifted it slowly. Harlan stared as if seeing a ghost he had personally buried. And Colonel Ward said, "Doctor, you just erased a file that proves you lie." Harlan was not arrested immediately. That was the part that nearly broke Lena. In stories, truth arrives like thunder, and the guilty are taken away before the echo phase. In real life, there were protocols, jurisdictions, classification reviews, chain of command consultations, and men who said careful words like alleged and pending, while standing over evidence still warm from betrayal. Colonel Ward confiscated Harlan's access card and placed him under armed supervision in a command office. Harlan demanded counsel, refused further questions, and claimed the purge had been an automated preservation procedure, triggered by unauthorized access. No one believed him, but belief had never been enough for Lena Hart. She sat beside Owen Pike's bed that afternoon, while Ranger slept on the floor between them, twitching in dreams. The body camera footage had been copied to secure drives. Micah's field card sat in evidence. Her temporary credential had been photographed, sealed, and logged. Still, Lena felt no victory. Owen watched her with hollow eyes. "You look like you're waiting for someone to take it back." She gave a tired laugh. "The obvious. I know the face." "Which face?" "The one survivors make when the world finally admits what happened, and somehow it still doesn't give anyone back." Lena looked at Ranger. In sleep, the old dog's paws moved like he was running beside younger ghosts. I should have gone back for Micah," she said. Owen's voice sharpened despite his weakness. "Don't." "I heard him. You were carrying me." "I could have." "You could have died beside him. That's all." Lena's eyes burned. "He asked me to tell Victor, and Victor buried you instead." The door opened before she could answer. Colonel Ward stepped in, his cap tucked beneath his arm. He looked older than he had that morning. "I need both of you to hear something," he said. Owen shifted painfully. "But complicated." Lena stood. "What now?" Ward closed the door. "Harlan's first statement claims he erased the Raven 9 supplement to protect classified witnesses. He says your presence on the roster endangered survivors. Relocated after Black Ridge." Owen swore under his breath. Lena's face went blank. "That's not why he did it." "No," Ward said. "But it is enough to muddy motive unless we establish why he specifically targeted you. Because Micah told me about the second copy, and because you disobeyed his extraction order," Ward said. "The footage shows you treating civilians after he ordered withdrawal. I treated whoever was bleeding. That decision saved at least 4 people. According to the raw log." Ward hesitated. "Including a child who later testified in a war crimes inquiry." Lena gripped the bed rail. She had remembered a child's hand. She had not known the child lived. Owen saw her face soften and understood before she spoke. "One lived," she whispered. Ward nodded. "More than one." For the first time all day, Lena's grief cracked enough for light to pass through. Then Ward said the thing that took it away again. "The inquiry sealed the witnesses. Harlan used that seal as cover. He removed everyone not easily traceable through permanent unit records, contractors, temporary, medical attachments, interpreters. But for most, he created cross-index placeholders." Owen's eyes narrowed. "For most?" Ward looked at Lena. "Not you. Your record wasn't hidden. It was marked false." Lena absorbed that. "I ever came forward, you'd look like a fraud." Ranger woke suddenly and lifted his head. A voice crackled over the hospital intercom. "Code Gray, Administrative Wing." "Code Gray." Ward moved to the door. "Stay here." Lena did not. Ranger was already on his feet, heading into the hall. Owen tried to sit up, failed, and cursed. "Go," he told Lena. "He knows something." The administrative wing had erupted into controlled chaos. 2 NPS stood outside the office where Harlan had been held. One had blood on his lip. The door was open. Inside, a chair lay overturned and the window beside the fire stairs was cracked. Harlan was gone. Ward's face hardened. "Locked down the hospital." Ranger sniffed the chair, then the windowsill, then turned away from the fire stairs entirely. He headed not down but deeper into the administrative hall. "He didn't run that way," Lena said. Word followed. "How do you know?" "Because Ranger says he wants us to think he did." The dog moved past offices, past file rooms, past a staff elevator. until he reached a wall display dedicated to Mercer's history. Photographs of commanders, ribbon cuttings, a glass case containing old ceremonial items. Ranger stood beneath a framed picture of Victor Harlan, receiving an award 5 years earlier for preservation of sensitive medical records. Then the dog began to bark. Lena looked closer. The frame was slightly crooked. Ward removed it from the wall. Behind it was a narrow service panel. Fresh scratches marked the screws. Inside, hidden between pipes, sat a hospital phone and a stack of copied documents. Ward lifted the top sheet. It was Lena's personnel denial form. At the bottom was an instruction line typed in cold bureaucratic language. If subject Lena Hart attempts service verification, refer to psychiatric review and flag as identity fabrication risk. Lena read it once, then again. For years she had believed she was simply forgotten, misfiled, lost in classification. But this was not forgetting. This was hunting. Behind the denial form was a transfer order scheduled for that night, moving Owen Pike to a private neuropsychiatric facility under Harlan's authority. Lena's stomach turned. Ward's voice became lethal. He was going to remove the witness. Ranger suddenly bolted toward the stairwell at the far end of the hall. From below came the faint metallic sound of a door closing. Harlan had not escaped. He was still inside the hospital, and he was heading toward Owen. The recovery ward went into lockdown, but lockdowns were built for ordinary threats. Harlan knew the hospital's doors, blind spots, override codes, and emergency risks. For years, he had controlled who entered the archive, who assessed old wounds, and who got told they were imagining their own scars. He moved through Mercer like a man walking inside a lie he had designed himself. Ranger moved faster. Lena followed him down the stairwell with Colonel Ward and 2 NPS behind her. Her breath burned. Her wrist scar throbbed beneath the glove. Every landing pulled her backward in time. Stairs becoming rock, hospital alarms becoming distant gunfire, the dog's nails becoming the scrape of a stretcher dragged through gravel. At the recovery ward entrance, a nurse pointed down the hall. Someone used an admin override. Owen's room door was open. His bed was empty. For one terrible second, Lena saw Black Ridge again, a space where a living man had been, a choice already made by someone else. Then Ranger barked from the service corridor. They found Harlan near the old rehabilitation gym, one arm around Owen's chest, dragging him backward toward a staff exit. Owen was barely conscious, hospital gown soaked with sweat, fresh blood spreading beneath his dressing. Harlan held a scalpel at the edge of his own wrist, not Owen's throat, which somehow made the scene more daring. "Stay back," Harlan said. "I am not going down as a murderer." Ward aimed his sidearm low. "Let him go. You have no idea what you're opening." Lena stepped forward. "I know exactly what you closed." Harlan's eyes shone with panic. "They would have destroyed my brother's name." "No," Lena said. "My last name was clean. You don't know that. I was with him when he died." Harlan's grip tightened around Owen. The wounded man groaned. "My brother disobeyed extraction." Harlan snapped. "He let a dog follow a contract medic into a kill zone. He chose chaos over command. He chose chaos." Harlan's voice cracked. "You came back alive with his dog and his last words, and everyone wanted to call you a hero. But if they reviewed the footage, they would ask why operations ordered withdrawal. They would ask why I left witnesses. They would ask why Micah ignored me. My family would know I gave the order that trapped him." Lena's anger dissolved into something sadder. "So you erased me to keep from hearing him forgive you." Harlan looked as though she had cut him. Ranger stepped forward, slow and deliberate. Harlan's face changed when he looked at the dog. For the first time, he did not see evidence. He saw his brother's partner, old, scarred, still faithful to a dead man's final command. "Ranger," Harlan whispered. The dog stopped. For one fragile heartbeat, Lena thought grief, might do what justice had not. Then, Harlan shoved Owen toward the floor and ran. Ranger launched, not to maul, not to kill. He struck Harlan behind the knees with the precision of a trained military working dog, knocking him sideways into the padded wall. The scalpel skidded across the floor, and PS swarmed. Ward pulled Owen clear. Lena dropped beside Owen, pressing both hands to the reopened wound. Owen, stay with me. He blinked at her, pain-glazed and stubborn. You're bossy for a ghost. She laughed once, brokenly, and kept pressure. Behind her, Harlan was cuffed. He no longer fought. He stared at Ranger, who stood between him and Lena, chest heaving, ears forward. I just wanted it to stop, Harlan whispered. Lena did not look back. So did we. By evening, the hospital knew enough to stop whispering stolen valor. But the final reckoning did not happen in a courtroom or archive room. It happened the next morning in the main atrium, because Colonel Ward made a decision that administrators hated and soldiers understood. He ordered the evidence board moved into public view. Not the classified witness names, not details that would endanger survivors, but the truth that could finally be spoken. Raven 9 had included a combat medic attachment. Her name was Lena Hart. Her call sign was Lantern. Her service had been denied through deliberate falsification. Staff gathered on balconies and stairwells. Patients came in wheelchairs. Veterans leaned on canes. The story moved from person to person in low tones until the atrium became a living courtroom. Lena did not want to stand there. Ward found her beside the chapel. Ranger pressed against her leg. You don't have to speak, he said. Good, but you do have to receive what was withheld. She looked at him. An apology. That too, before she could answer. The elevator doors opened. Owen Pike was wheeled into the atrium by an orderly, pale but determined. He wore his dress jacket over his hospital gown, medals unevenly pinned by shaking hands. Ranger went to him first, touching his nose to Owen's fingers. Then another elevator opened, and another. Men and women began to enter, some in uniform, some in civilian clothes, some scarred, some gray-haired, some carrying folded caps against their chests. Lena recognized none of them at first. Then one man lifted his sleeve, a Raven 9 patch. Another held up a burned strip of cloth matching hers. A woman with a cane whispered, Lantern, got my brother to the bird. Someone else said, she held the line at the culvert. Then Owen raised a trembling hand toward the growing crowd. Raven 9, he said, voice rough but carrying. Account for your medic. The atrium went silent. One by one, the forgotten survivors turned toward Lena Hart, and every person who had once been told she did not exist prepared to answer with the only proof the archive could not delete. The first salute came from Owen Pike. He could barely lift his arm. His face was gray with pain, his hospital gown visible beneath the crooked dress jacket, his fingers trembling so badly the salute should have looked weak. It did not. It looked like a door opening after years sealed shut. Then the others followed, Raven 9 survivors. Former mechanics, medics, drivers, security escorts, witnesses who could safely appear, and soldiers who had carried guilt like shrapnel under the skin. Some saluted with perfect form, some with damaged hands. One man raised 2 fingers because the rest were gone. A woman in civilian clothes pressed her fist over her heart because her shoulder would not lift. Every gesture landed on Lena with unbearable weight. For years, the archive had said she was no one. Now the whole unit stood before her and refused to let the lie breathe another second. Lena did not move at first. Her hands hung at her sides. She looked like she might run. Ranger sensed it and leaned against her knee, steady and warm, as he had in the hallway, as he must have leaned against Micah in the final seconds before the smoke took him. Colonel Ward stepped beside her, holding a small velvet case. Lena Hart, he said, voice echoing through the atrium. On behalf of Mercer Military Command, and pending formal correction through the Department of Records, I acknowledge that you served as combat medic attachment under Raven 9, call sign, Lenter, Ushik. Your service was wrongfully denied. Your record was deliberately falsified. Your courage saved lives. Lena's eyes filled, but she did not cry yet. Ward opened the case. Inside was not a new medal. It was her old dog tag, clean but still burned dark at the edges, recovered from Micah's field box. The one stamped with her name, the one the archive had never wanted found. Ward offered it with both hands. Lena stared at it. I don't deserve all this, she whispered. Owen heard her. Somehow, across the atrium he heard, you don't get to decide that alone anymore, he said. A soft sound moved through the crowd. Not laughter, not quite. The sound of people recognizing the survivor's oldest argument and refusing to let her win it. Lena took the tag. The metal was cold, then warm, then almost alive in her palm. Ranger rose onto his hind legs with effort and touched his nose to the tag. A whine escaped him, thin and ancient. Lena finally broke. She sank to one knee and wrapped both arms around the old dog's neck. Ranger pressed into her, eyes closing. Around them salutes held steady. No one rushed her. No one asked her to be composed. For once, the room allowed the medic to be wounded. When she stood, she faced the unit. Her salute came slowly, because every inch of it had to pass through years of shame, threats, silence, and grief before it reached the light. I'm sorry, she said. Owen shook his head. No, I left people behind. A survivor in the second row stepped forward. You came back for more than command allowed, another said. You saved my son. Another, you stayed when the order said leave. Lena looked at Ward, overwhelmed. Ward's voice softened. The record will show the truth. From the side of the atrium, escorted by NPS, Victor Harlan was brought through in cuffs. He was being transferred for formal investigation. No one shouted at him. Somehow that silence was worse. He stopped when he saw Lena with the dog tag. For a moment, the old hatred was gone. All that remained was a brother who had built a prison around his guilt and locked innocent people inside it. Did he suffer? Harlan asked. Lena could have refused him. Part of her wanted to. Instead, she told the truth. Ah, yes, she said. But he wasn't alone. Ranger was with him. I was with him. And his last words were for you. Harlan's mouth trembled. What were they? Lena touched the dog tag. Tell Victor I was not angry. Harlan folded as if the sentence had cut the strings holding him upright. The NPS caught him under the arm. No apology came. Maybe none could be large enough. But his silence finally looked like understanding. Ranger watched him go. Then the old dog turned away from the man who erased the record and returned to the woman who had carried the truth. The formal correction took weeks. The investigation took longer. Headlines came and went. Officials used careful phrases. Mercer Military Hospital issued statements about accountability, archival integrity, and the sacred obligation to preserve service histories. But the people who had been in the atrium remembered something simpler. They remembered a nurse who had been called a liar kneeling beside a wounded soldier. They remembered an old nine pulling proof from the ashes. They remembered a unit saluting a woman the archive denied. And Lena Hart, who had spent years believing existence required permission from paper, learned the truth from a dog, a wounded survivor, and a room full of raised hands. A hero can be erased from a file, but not from the lives she saved. Ranger lived his final years beside Lena, no longer guarding a secret, but resting beside the woman he had found again. Owen recovered slowly, carrying his scars with less loneliness. And every year, when Raven 9 gathered, one chair stayed open for Micah. One patch lay beside it, and one nurse stood tall when they called her name. If this story moved you, subscribe to Forgotten Medic Files for more hidden heroes brought back into the light.